Hey, you know what I forgot? I forgot to put my mannequin here and the speed shooter harness on it, because I sell those. I make them and I sell them. Really important part of my... Anyway, I'll do another video on that. Hey, I'm Ron Bielefeld. This is Whistling Wings Photography. Welcome. I shoot Canon. Yeah, have for a long time, forever. Shoot Nikon, Sony. I've shot everything. Not everything. Can't shoot everything. Everything's a lot of stuff. This is an OM-1 Mark II with the 150 to 400 f4.5 fixed aperture. Hey, it's even got a built-in teleconverter. This says 1.25, kind of different than a 1.4 or 2 times teleconverter that I'm used to. But this is a Micro Four Thirds system. I'm sure you all know that. But now I'm telling you, again, I've never shot this system. Well, again, you know, I'm using all these terms that are like concrete terminal terms. I have messed around with it because, of course, some of my clients shoot this system. But when I was in Costa Rica, which I just got back. I was there for almost a month, doing 2 back-to-back tours. Craziness, but awesome. Had 2 great groups. OM Systems contacted me. Yeah. I got an email. And they said, hey, Ron, we know you shoot Canon, but you want to try the OM-1 Mark II and whatever lenses you shoot for birds and that we have that would work for you. And I said, yeah, I did. I do. I am shooting this now, giving it a try for about a month. They lent me this. This is a really good setup on paper for what I do. Top of the line camera body, a lens that, you know, it says 150 to 400, but because it's on a Micro Four Thirds sensor, it's really 300 to 800. And then you put the teleconverter on and it'll go out to 1,000 millimeters. So this is my initial impressions of this after shooting it for a whole week. Man, I should know everything about this camera system now in a week. Well, no. But I've shot enough cameras and I've shot birds in flight and birds long enough, I can get a pretty quick feel for these things. Initial impressions of the system coming up. If you're interested, stay tuned. Okay, well, my initial impressions of this system. A couple things, right? You know what? Hold on a minute. Just a minute. I have a lot of notes, and I'm gonna grab my notes because I will forget something, because this is a whole new system for me. So I'm gonna grab my notes, and now let me scroll back through these things. General thoughts, yeah. Well, let's start there. You know, this thing's really light. This is 1,000 millimeters. Shoots 50 frames per second. The lens is what, 4 pounds, a little more, another pound or, you know, 6.5 pounds. My Canon 600 f4 weighs 6.5 pounds all by itself. This is a pretty portable system. You can get smaller lenses than this, of course, to go on this body, and it's really small and portable. A client on my last tour in Costa Rica shot this system. He was running around with it. It almost makes you look stupid. Well, no, you're not stupid carrying the 600 f4 because that's a great lens. But anyway, small and light, that's the elephant in the room here with the Micro Four Thirds. But then you think about, okay, this camera is only 20 megapixels. Only 20 megapixels. Hey, my R1's only 24 megapixels. I will tell you this, the megapixels in this camera are quality megapixels. They're quality pixels. Here's some pictures in good light, relatively low ISOs. Yes, we'll get to that point. Noisiness and ISO settings with the Micro Four. It's a small sensor. But anyway, wow. I am impressed with the image quality of this camera and of this lens, even at 1,000 millimeters. Hey, I can tell you right now, I'd shoot this all day long, never think about image quality. So, how about ergonomics? Let's just talk. A small body. I've got the grip on here. I have to have a grip. I mean, with the grip, it's very comfortable. It's a small body, but I like the grip here. It dents in a lot. There's plenty of room here for your fingers, even if you wear gloves. I know another camera brand that's small and you can get your fingers in there. This is not a problem on the OM-1 Mark II. I love the grip on this camera. I have small hands. With the battery grip, it is beautiful. Ergonomic button layout. Okay, Canon has its front dial right up here. It's in front of the shutter button. Here it's behind it. Well, behind it. Here's what I don't like about Sony and Nikon. Their main dial is way up here on the front and it's totally horizontal. This one is in front, but it's angled up and right down. Not bad. Not bad. It has a rear dial right here. I like it. Autofocus on buttons in a great position. My thumb falls right there. But here, there's only one back button that you can assign. This is ergonomics in a way for autofocus function and to give you an autofocus area. And that's the autofocus on button. Yeah, you can program the half press, but I'm a back button shooting guy. I don't like to do both. And anyway, one button. There is a function switch, 1 and 2. I'm showing pictures of this close up, so you don't have to try to see it right here. So you can switch between 1 and 2 really quickly and get to a different focus. They call them targets, target areas. OM does. I call them focus points or autofocus areas, zones. You can switch between 2 really quickly with this little switch, and that's a savior. It is, because I like to go to a spot when I need it. You don't need it as much with this camera. We'll talk about that. General ergonomics, the lens, very smooth zooming, internal zoom, which you can easily move while you're shooting. Problem is, if you try to zoom actively while you're shooting in continuous autofocus mode, shooting bursts of 25 frames, 50 frames per second, it interrupts the focus. That's not it. That's focusing. That's not ergonomics. But the ergonomics of the lens, it's great. What else do I have in here? Hey, it's got the best weather sealing of any camera on the market. I think you could drop this thing in the water and it go completely under and you pick it up and it'd be all right. I'm not sure about the lens, but I'm pretty sure that would be okay too for quite a good dunk. So I'm not worried about that. It's built like a tank. It's very solid. Menu system. It's not bad. I could figure it out. I hadn't hardly looked at this menu in this camera before I got this camera body. And I could figure it out. There's still some weird terms in there. Oh, what is it with Sony and Canon and Nikon and OM systems? They use funny terms for things. I think they're funny. They don't really relate completely to the function that they're assigned to. So an example, autofocus scanner. We'll talk about that a little bit. This is just initial thoughts. Wait till I do my full menu setup. That's coming a month from now, maybe. Once I really use this camera. Autofocus scanner. What the heck is that? Well, what it is it's the cycling thing. if it misses focus and it's not focused on anything, if you don't have the scanner on, it won't refocus. You can pump the back button as much as you want. It's not going to refocus. You turn the scanner on, it will refocus. And I will tell you this, it's the best I've seen in mirrorless cameras. You know, digital SLRs used to cycle when they couldn't find a subject. And that was nice because you pump it and it wouldn't get stuck in the mud on something that you didn't want it to focus on. This camera, it doesn't really do that when you have the scanner turned on. I learned that. So anyway, autofocus scanner, weird term. Anyway, general thoughts on ergonomics, I like it. There's nothing not to like, really. Oh, and it's got a dial up here. And it's got buttons, physical buttons for a lot of the important things. It's got this super menu thing. Kind of neat. And you double tap the LCD screen. You don't just tap it, you double tap it. And then you hit this OK button. And yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, moving on. Maybe not in the order you want to talk about these things, but it's the order I've got them written down. IS on this camera and lens combination. Oh, it works. I'll show you some video. Before it's turned on, after it's turned on. It doesn't stay running, though, unless you have half press or the autofocus on button. And if you take it off, I bet you there's a timer in here that I don't have set to keep it running. So that may be that. But anyway, it's powerful and it works really well. But if you notice on this is a $7,000+ lens, and it's the quality of the imagery you get, and yeah, I'll pay that for this. But IS on off, no modes like on the other, like on Canon. Let's just put it that way. No, not all Canon lenses have that. But the thing is this has an auto setting for the IS in there, and it's supposed to determine how you're moving. I've seen that before with Canon. I don't like the way it works in OM. I don't. There is a setting for horizontal panning. It's IS2, I believe. But you got to get into a menu to change it. Why not a switch on the lens? It's just quicker. Is there, let's see, autofocus, and there's no IS, no button that says IS. You know, I like to be able to just change the modes. If the auto would work great, fine. You wouldn't have to change the modes, but it doesn't work great. Not for panning. It doesn't know what you're doing right away, and it will keep you from being able to track fast birds in flight action, which is what I do. That's the review I'm doing, my initial thoughts on. It is very effective, though, and static stuff, it's great. Anyway, enough about IS. Let's see, what's this? Oh, should we talk about autofocus? Initial impressions? Well, I'll tell you one thing. When I first started shooting this, and of course I set it up very quickly, and then you start shooting it to see what it does. How does it behave on birds in flight? Ooh, I didn't like it. I'll show you an example of what it was doing. Here comes a bird. Against not dirty backgrounds, pretty big in the frame, and it would lock on. The thing is, in the viewfinder, it has a white box on the subject it's going to focus on. Then you hit the back button, and if you have the indicators turned on, little green squares blink around on the bird that and it says it's focused, right? And you're shooting 25, 50 frames per second, but then you look at your images and it's focus, focus, miss, 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 focus, miss, miss, focus, focus, miss, miss. Woo, not the performance I was hoping for, okay? And it wasn't just like, oh, it was going to the foot, not the eye. I mean, the whole bird was going out of focus. You can see that in this series of images. The thing is, though, okay, I'm learning this system. I go in and I figured some things out. And to cut to the chase, it's now performing pretty darn well. 25, 50 frames per second, and this is what I did. So, you have to make sure that the autofocus illuminator, that's another setting in the menu, obviously, is off. I had that on. Just turning that off seemed to make a big difference in the performance of this autofocus system. Turn the center priority off for birds in flight. Don't have that on. I'll show you how that works. And it's great for staticky stuff, crowded things where you got a bunch of birds close together and stuff. You got a lock thing too. You can lock it on the subject. Got my AE lock button set up to lock on a subject and stays on that. So it's pretty neat how this all works. But anyway, for birds in flight, keeping it on the bird, getting your hit rate up, turn the illuminator off, center priority off, sensitivity, -2 all the way to +2. I worked in that whole range. And 0, the center setting works for me. -2, wow, it seemed to, again, I don't know if this really should affect it being able to stay on a moving, flying bird, but it seemed to. In the negative side, forget it. Positive side, then it's jumping around too to different subjects, things that really aren't birds. And of course, I've got it set to bird AI identification. 0. The default settings seem to be the best, and I will give OM credit. It seems like in these types of settings, the center mark is the default, and it should be, because it kind of fits, at least what I'm doing. So makes your choices a little bit easier. Sensitivity set to, I already talked about the scanner thing. You got to have that on. Otherwise, it's not going to, it just doesn't, yeah. What else? Once I did these changes, my hit rate was improved greatly, and I'll show you another series of images. And now it's hitting just about the whole way in. Something gaining pretty quickly on the camera. It's not a small bird. It's probably a roseate spoonbill. But anyway, I'm not disappointed now in the hit rate from this camera. Is it as good as the Canon R1, Canon R5 Mark II? Well, the Canon R5 Mark II has issues now with the new firmware update, and I'm telling you, we'll talk about that in another video if I have time. But I don't know if it's quite as good, but it's pretty close. One thing that I don't like about the autofocus system on this camera, and I wish OM would treat this, there's brackets, depending on what target area you choose, whether it's a single point in the center or a zone, I call it, a group of autofocus targets, pretty big one, maybe close. There's little corner brackets that show up when you're in a group autofocus target setting, and you can't see them. They're really dim. And if you get a dark background, take a look. Take a look. You can't see them even when it's against a background that you should be able to see them, and then when you put it against a dark background, they completely disappear. So with it's a group, okay, in the center, I mean, if it's a zone type group, autofocus target area kind of thing, but what if you're trying to put a spot on a bird? Just the center autofocus target. You can't see it. Yeah. Make them red or black. Something that stands out. Green. Maybe not green. Blue? I don't know. But it's not working for me the way it is. Of course, this is just all my issues. We all have issues, right? Anyway, okay, so back button auto. We're talking about autofocus now, so back buttons. I like 3 on my Canon cameras. I have 3 different autofocus areas at my fingertip, my thumb tip. That's not really a finger, it's a thumb. Anyway, and don't tell me that I don't need 3. I like 3. Big zone, full frame, big small zone, big or a small zone, move it over to full frame eye detection, and then move it all the way over to spot. And all I gotta do is move my thumb, which I can do really, really quickly. Impossible to set this camera up that way, of course. I like having choices for my autofocus areas, target areas, whatever you want to call them. Why can't I set up the AEL button, the autofocus on button, and the ISO button to do different autofocus target areas? Can't do it that I can find. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. But I've looked. I looked in what I can assign those to those buttons, and I can't do it, I don't think. What else in the autofocus? Yeah, that's about it, I think. This is the initial impressions. It's going to be a long video for initial impressions, but that's me. I talk a lot. Frames per second speed, I mean 25, 50 frames per second at 20 megapixels. Yeah, that's plenty. Buffer. Buffer seems sufficient at 25 megapixels. 25 megapixels. 25 frames per second, maybe not quite what I'd want at 50 frames per second. But here's the issue. I don't really know. I have a hard time telling because when you're in electronic shutter, which you have to be in, it's called silent shooting mode on the OM-1 Mark II. We'll talk about that in a minute. We're getting to it right now. It is silent. And I can't, there's no fake shutter noise that you can turn on. So I don't know when I hit the buffer and it slows down. Canon had this problem with the original R5. No fake shutter noise for electronic shutter. They fixed that. All of them have it now. Sony has it, Nikon has it, Canon has it. OM needs to get a fake shutter noise you can turn on. Options are good things to have. They're stuck on the idea that electronic shutter is for silent shooting. That's fine if you want it to be silent, but put a volume in there for a fake shutter noise. You can turn it all the way off if you want, or I can turn it up a little bit so I can hear it, so I know when I hit my buffer. It's not just, shooting electronic shutter is not just about silent shooting. It's also about no slapping of a mechanical shutter, so you can shoot at very slow shutter speeds with no shake. You can get perfectly sharp images with the IS turned on, etc., etc. It's for faster frames per second, etc., etc. It's not just about putting in an electronic shutter in order to shoot silent. I want a fake shutter noise if I want it. There's a purpose for it. It's necessary. Please put it in there. Thank you. Okay, what else can I say? It's fast. ISO performance. Okay, that was a bad face, but not really, you know. Micro Four Thirds, small sensor. Can I shoot my R1 at 30,000 ISO. Yeah, there's some noise there, but I can deal with it. DxO raw, pure raw, topaz denoise, whatever. It's still, they turn out really well. I haven't tried to shoot that high on this camera. To be honest, about ISO 10,000. Yes, there's the physics of light involved here. Yes, this camera's noisier than a full frame sensor, an R1, R5 Mark II. Those are my comparisons, because that's what I'm shooting now with Canon. I don't mean this to be a Canon comparison video. It's just it's just it's a relative thing. For me, it's what I'm going to cut to the chase on this. Here's my final verdict on this. I can shoot to ISO 10,000, which is pretty darn good on a Micro Four Thirds sensor. If you're willing to work on your images a little bit and you're good at maneuvering around DxO, Pure Raw 5 now, Topaz Denoise, Topaz Sharpen, you can make high ISO shots look really good coming out of this camera. Here's some images. Take a look. These are ISO 10,000, 8,000, 64, 5,000. And then all the way down to, what, 500. 500. 800. 1,000. 1,250. Not an issue. I'm really, really excited about the performance of this little sensor and this camera and noise. It's really pretty good. You know, so I just noticed something. I wonder what that means. I'll get to that later. I'm still learning this. There's a button. Anyway, I'm still learning it. I'll get to that in my full review. So there you go. ISO performance, not that bad. You know, this thing has some cool stuff in it. And it has live highlight and shadow alerts that pop up in the viewfinder when you're shooting, if you want them to. Here's where you find it in the menu. Those of you who are watching this that know OM systems, this camera, you go, duh. Yeah, well, it's kind of cool to me because it's new, because Canon doesn't have anything like that for stills shooting. Now, I will say this, I don't use it. I tried it. I do some stuff where I shoot full manual exposure. I expose for my bird in the light that I want it in, creative backlit stuff and all that. And that stuff lighting up, whether it's shadows, the bird's backlit and the bird's got highlights on it, and I'm exposing for that so the background is all blocked up, so it's all turning blue on me. Or I'm shooting a high key shot of an osprey, and now I'm blowing out the sky, and that's all turning red. Ooh, that's very distracting to me when I'm trying to track a bird in flight. This is just me. For other more static stuff, I think it would be really a good way to work and get your exposures exactly the way you want them. For me, for my birds in flight, I don't engage that. But it's there, and I think it's a neat thing. Canon should do that. Nikon should do that. Do Nikon and Sony do that? I don't know. I know Canon doesn't. So anyway, yeah, so that's kind of cool. Wow, I think that's it. That's it for my initial thoughts on this camera. I'm excited. I want to ask OM Systems. They gave me this for a month, but I'm going to Montana middle of June. I'd like to take this with me. Do you think they'd let me keep it for another couple weeks after I'm supposed to give it back? Find out, because I'd love to shoot this as my main camera in Montana for birds and mammals, whatever else we find. Hey, so there's my initial thoughts on the OM-1 Mark II and the 150 to 400 with the built-in teleconverter. I love it. Portability and all that. I'm going to shoot it for some more time here, and I'm going to get a really good feel for this thing, and I'll get back to you with a full menu set up for birds in flight and my overall review of the system. So stay tuned for that. Hey, until next time, I hope you're having great light. I hope you're getting great images. Be safe out there. I'll see you soon.